A 45-year-old woman named Lauren walked into an office building in West Virginia where she worked as an office manager, and she dropped her purse, her phone, and her cigarettes on her desk. It was a Friday, and so Lauren was in a really good mood. It had become a tradition in their family that on Sundays, Lauren and Dan's kids, they had 3 kids, they would come back home to their parents' house and they would have a big family meal together. Lauren switched on her computer and then looked at her schedule and saw she had a whole bunch of meetings back to back to back that day. And so immediately she was worried that she would not be able to slip out that day and go for a quick walk, something she had recently been doing a lot of because her doctor had recently told her that she had a circulation disorder that was called peripheral vascular disease. And what that meant was the arteries that carried the blood from her heart down to her legs and her feet were becoming blocked. So far, her only symptoms were the occasional leg cramp, but if the disease got worse, it could lead to pain and mobility issues, and also heart attack and stroke. She didn't need medication, she just needed to quit, change her diet, and become more physically active. And Lauren had totally leaned into this and was being much more active and had changed her diet. She hadn't quit yet, but she planned to. And so as Lauren kind of began her day, her cell phone rang. When Lauren looked at the phone, she didn't recognize the number, so she decided to let it go to voicemail. But then she got another phone call, and when she looked, it was the same number calling her back. And this time, Lauren did pick up the phone, and when she said hello, on the other end of the line, she heard a police officer say in a very serious voice, "Am I speaking to Dan's wife?" And so right away, Lauren's heart began to race, and she would tell the officer, yes, what's going on? And all the officer would tell her is that Dan, unfortunately, was in a very serious car accident, and so you need to come to the scene right away. But when she got there, she saw there were so many police cars and ambulances and all these people that she couldn't even see what was going on, let alone park anywhere near where this accident happened. So she wound up parking her car around the corner, and then she got out and just sprinted towards all the police. And so she pushed past all these people, and finally she can see through the crowd, and she can see her husband's car, and it's absolutely mangled. And there's all these first responders that are in a circle on the pavement. There was Dan lying in this huge pool of just motionless on the ground. And so before she even got over to her husband, Lauren already knew what had happened. Dan was dead. About 2 hours later, Lauren returned to her home where her 3 kids, her son and her 2 daughters, were now waiting for her. They just immediately swarmed her and hugged her, and they all just cried together. Finally, Lauren tried to speak through her sobs, but when she did, she just couldn't get words out. It was like her chest was so tight she couldn't even speak. And so Lauren actually said to her kids, "I think I'm having a panic attack." Lauren straight up just could not breathe. I mean, she was trying to pull air in, but it wasn't going in, and she was totally panicking. And so she looked at her kids and just mouthed the words, "I can't breathe." At which point the kids understood, like, this is way beyond just grief and sadness. Like, she's having a physical emergency right now. And so one of Lauren's daughters picked up the phone and called 911. A few minutes later, an ambulance arrived and they would take Lauren to a local hospital. But as soon as they got there, the doctors and nurses determined that very likely Lauren had had a heart attack. And even though she was basically stable right now, their fear is she was going to have another one, and this particular local hospital just lacked the resources and staff to actually treat Lauren. And so they pretty much immediately transferred Lauren to another hospital called the JW Memorial Hospital in Morgantown, West Virginia. Dr. Conard Falinger was the cardiologist on duty at JW Memorial Hospital when Lauren was brought into the intensive care unit, followed closely behind by her 3 adult children. He didn't want to get wrapped up emotionally in this case, but at the same time, the doctor felt a very deep need to save Lauren. Like, let this family have one good thing happen to them. But Lauren's condition was pretty dire. When an artery in the heart gets blocked, the blood can't circulate in the heart, and so the heart dies. And preliminary testing on Lauren showed there was already signs of damage to her heart. Her heartbeat was also irregular, and it was too fast, and her blood pressure was dangerously low. And then also, when Dr. Falinger looked at some imaging of Lauren's heart, he could see that the majority of her heart muscle wasn't even moving. Basically, Lauren's heart was working way harder and way faster than it should be to accomplish nothing. And so, very quickly, Dr. Falinger realized that unless he was able to find the blocked artery in Lauren's heart and clear it, that Lauren would die. And so Dr. Falinger looked up at Lauren's 3 kids who were just standing there in silence, waiting for more bad news. And Dr. Falinger said to them, your mom needs to go into surgery right now. Once Lauren was ready, Dr. Fallinger watched on a monitor as another surgeon fed a thin, flexible tube called a catheter into an artery in Lauren's leg and then fed it up towards her heart. This surgery was called cardiac angioplasty. Basically, that surgeon was going to use that catheter, that tube, and put it into Lauren's heart and then shoot dye through that catheter tube into the blood in Lauren's heart. And then Dr. Fallinger and the other doctors could watch to see where this dye went. If the dye was pumped out of the heart like it should be, they'd see it go in all different directions. But if at some point on the monitor the dye just stopped inside the heart and didn't go anywhere, then that would mean they found a blockage. And so when the surgeon had the catheter in Lauren's heart, he injected the dye and they all watched on the monitor, and her heart functioned completely fine. There was no blockage in her heart. And so Dr. Fallinger and the rest of the doctors and surgeons, they were all totally baffled, because what this meant was whatever was happening to Lauren, or whatever did happen to Lauren, was not a heart attack. But make no mistake, Lauren's heart was still absolutely dying. It was just some other thing killing it. Heavy use could in theory cause what was happening to Lauren, but Lauren didn't drink. Infection was another option, but Lauren showed no signs of having an infection. Certain chemotherapy have been known to damage the heart, but Lauren wasn't on chemo and certainly would not have accidentally been exposed to chemo without knowing about it. And so Dr. Fallinger just sat in his office feeling so bad, he felt like he had failed as a doctor. But just then, Dr. Fallinger has this epiphany. He remembers this weird medical article he had read somewhat recently, and he realized what was going on with Lauren and her family was like the same thing that happened in that article. And because Dr. Fallinger did not have any other ideas of how to handle what was going on with Lauren, he decided he would just try to do what they did in that article. So Dr. Fallinger got up and he ran to Lauren's hospital room, and when he got in there, he saw Lauren's kids and he called them over to him. And he would tell them that he's going to give their mom some medication that's going to spike her blood pressure and keep it high, but then he needs them to gather around her and just talk to her like she's your mom. Talk lovingly, soothingly, remind her that you're still here and that everything is okay. And the kids, they all agreed to do this. And then Dr. Fallinger, he gave the medicine to Lauren, and then he watched as her 3 kids circled up around the head of the bed, and they're all crying and holding their mom and telling her how much they love her and please come back to us, come back. And as they're doing this, Dr. Fallinger just quietly walked out of the room, hoping this would work. And sure enough, just a week later, Lauren was all better. It would turn out the way in which Lauren lost her husband, both the suddenness of getting that phone call, combined with just the unthinkable horror of seeing your loved one on the road in a pool of blood dead. I mean, that situation was so stressful for Lauren that her brain released a ton of stress hormones into her body. So much so that these stress hormones literally paralyzed her heart. And so you can understand why all the doctors thought this was a heart attack, because this sort of looked like one. But this condition does have its own name. It's called stress cardiomyopathy. However, it's known by its more casual name, which is broken heart syndrome. Basically, Lauren loved her husband so much that to witness what happened to him and to learn about it so suddenly and abruptly, it nearly killed her. And it just so happens that a few months before Lauren was checked into the hospital, Dr. Fallinger happened to read a medical article about broken heart syndrome. And the only way you can treat broken heart syndrome is just to try to keep the patient alive long enough that the stress hormones leave their body naturally, at which point their heart goes back to normal. And sure enough, a few days later, when Lauren did kind of come out of it and recover, she would say that she felt herself drifting off towards death. I mean, she really knew she was dying. But then she remembers hearing her kids calling to her and saying how much they loved her and to please come back. We need you. We already lost Dad. We got to keep you. And Lauren would say that's the reason she's still here today, is because she held on for her kids.